Hello everyone and welcome to the Kickabout Podcast YouTube channel, and in today's video, not one that I've done very often, but I wanted to do a bit of a reaction opinion based video. Not done stuff like this before, but I thought this particular topic was worthy of discussion because it's a topic close to my heart as a West Ham fan, but I thought it was worth weighing in with my opinion in and amongst the millions of other opinions that are already out there. So what we're going to do in this video, we are going to talk about what I think are the big 5 talking points about this entire deal. Now, it's important to say at this point that the deal is actually not completed. There's still a medical to do. They're still finalising the personal terms. However, I mean, to me, it's a formality. He's going to go. His medical record is exemplary. I can't see any reason why he would fail. So it's just a case of when. Probably this week, maybe tomorrow. At time of recording, we're on Thursday today, so maybe by the end of the week. But sooner or later, it's going to go through. So, big 5 questions then we're going to talk about. Is it a good move for West Ham? Is it a good move for Arsenal? Is it a fair price for Arsenal and for West Ham? What next for West Ham? And is Declan Rice leaving West Ham a legend? Those are the 5 questions we're going to talk about and try and disseminate some of the chaff and some of the noise that we've been seeing, or I've been seeing online about this deal. So let's start then with, is it a good move for West Ham? Now, I think that from a West Ham fan's perspective, this is not a situation we're used to. We are not used to having a player of this quality being sought after by so many teams. Now, in the end, it transpired that it was really only one team that had any real serious interest, which was Arsenal. But given that the money he's going for, this is not something West Ham are used to. This is a situation that is very foreign to West Ham fans, and I think that a lot of the sourness and bitterness that we've seen from some West Ham fans online could be put down to that, because it's just not something we've experienced before. The only player in living memory that I can think of, and I'm 34, is Dimitri Payet, but he was only with us for like a year and a half or however long it was, and you know, his departure from the club was incredibly different to that of Declan Rice. So I don't feel like we've really been through this. The last time before that, unless I'm missing anybody, is probably all the way back to when the likes of Joe Cole, Defoe, Lampard, Carrick, Glenn Johnson are all left after, you know, relegation issues and the like then. So for me, I don't think that we can ever realistically expect to hope onto Rice for his entire career. I think that the days of players being one club players are just, they're over. I don't know why we've got this expectation and understanding, I guess it is. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but why do we think that these players are going to stay with a club like West Ham for their entire career when they are quite clearly capable of playing at the top level? And West Ham, as big a club as they are and as big a following as they are not a club that sits at the top table. And it pains me to say it as a West Ham fan, but that is the reality of the football world that we live in. We are a club that on a good year can just knock on the door of Europe. We've had a couple of good years last year, but you can't use 2 good seasons out of the past 10 to judge a club and say that we're suddenly a top club that can compete for Europe every year, because you look at all those other 8 seasons, it's quite obvious that we're not. So for me, I think this was an obvious decision to make, that he was going to go at some point. And I think that West Ham have done well to get the money that they have. They played fairly hardball with Arsenal. I know a lot of Arsenal fans were upset about that. But ultimately, I think it is a good move for West Ham. I think that the longer this went on, the longer the saga went on, it was going to be worse and worse. It was going to get more and more toxic. And he only had 2 years left in his contract, so might as well cash in on him now when he's going to go for free. We know he's going to leave, isn't he? He's not going to sign a new contract. He's going to leave. Take the money for him now. So yeah, I think overall it is a good move for West Ham. I think that it's one that they would have been planning for, I'm sure. They would have known that there was a very high likelihood that Rice was going to leave in the summer. And I think that the gentleman's agreement that Rice had in place with our owner was testament to that. So assuming that gentleman's agreement had been there for a little while, you would hope that the hierarchy and the management at West Ham would have been preparing for his departure. So let's move on then and talk about Arsenal. Is it a good move for Arsenal? Now, this is where a lot of the noise, certainly from West Ham fans, has been coming from, because Declan Rice has stated on numerous occasions that whilst he never outright said he wanted to leave, but he hinted at it, right? He was sort of like saying it in not so many words. He just said he wanted to compete for the trophies at the top level. He wanted to play in the Champions League. He wanted to be all he can be in his career. So without saying it in so many words, he is effectively saying, I want to leave. Because, as I said, we all know that West Ham are not going to be a club that can compete in the Champions League every single season. I mean, we haven't been in it a season. So the noise has been because Arsenal have had obviously a very good season last year. They fell short at the final the final hurdle effectively and lost out to City. But there's no real shame in that. I mean, City are just a machine, right? So the fact that Arsenal were the only team that made the title race interesting last year is a real positive for them, and it's another step in the journey that they've been taking over the last few years with this new approach, this young team that they have, this positive mindset, this sort of champagne style football. Everything is going in the right direction for Arsenal. Now, however, a lot of people have said that, and I agree with them, that just because they've had one good season does not automatically make them title contenders every single season. Okay, the only team in the Premier League that you can throw that at is Man City. They're the only ones that you could almost say with as near 100% certainty as you can that they're going to be in the title fight for the entire season. There's no other club based on recent history that can say that, because every single one of those teams has at some point had at least one or two bad seasons in and amongst one or two good ones. Liverpool have done it, Chelsea have done it, United have done it, Arsenal, who knows whether they will be the next one in that list. Now, of course, they could turn around and they could build and keep going for the future and still be a title contender for years to come. That is absolutely possible. But the issue West Ham fans have had with it is that it's a gamble, because if you want to guarantee yourself trophies, if you want to go and win everything you can, then there's only really one option, and that's Man City, who apparently had an interest with that one bid that they made. The motives behind that bid are anybody's guess. Were they just trying to push Arsenal's price up? Were they actually interested in Rice? Who knows? But realistically, any club that he goes to outside of Man City is a gamble. So at that point, Declan Rice has to think in his mind, right, what do Arsenal have right now that ticks boxes for me personally? And West Ham fans can say all they like about, oh, he shouldn't go to Arsenal, he should go there, he should go this, why is he doing that? It's irrelevant to all of us. It's what Rice wants. It's what he believes is the right move for his career. So let's take a look at what Arsenal are offering him right now. They have, I think, the youngest average age in the entire league. So they've got a team that has a core now for the next 5 to 10 years, potentially. They're making good signings. They're making real moves in the transfer market. They've spent something like, under Arteta, something like 500 odd million now on something like 15 to 20 players. It's about an average of about 23 million per player, I think I saw. That, on the face of it, that seems a lot, but let's not forget Chelsea spent that in one season last season. They spent like almost, was it 750 million quid in one season? Look where that got them. But Arsenal, for the most part, have hit the ground with their transfers. I mean, last season they signed Jesus, they signed Zinchenko. I think Odegaard might have been a permanent signing last year, I could be wrong. But you look at the core of their team, they've improved in areas they needed to. And before that, Arsenal's transfer policy was seemingly just ignoring the problems that they had, especially in defence, and just kept on buying attack-minded players. And it finally feels like they do actually have a plan. And for me, if I'm Rice going into that team, if I've got a choice between Arsenal and Man City, here's the two factors, right? If I look at Man City, right, I'm going into Pep Guardiola's team. We know he's an outstanding coach, probably the best coach in the world. We're going into a team that wins everything. More often than not is going to be winning the Premier League. Has just won the Champions League, has won the League Cup God knows how many times. The FA Cup they won last year. He's guaranteed trophies there. He is absolutely guaranteed to win stuff at Man City over the course of the next 5 years. That's a dead certainty. Especially all the while Guardiola's there. If he leaves, different story. Maybe that things will change. With Arsenal though, they've won the FA Cups, they've won a few trophies here and there over the past sort of 10 years, but by and large, they've been a bit part player in most of those competitions. Now, things are looking considerably more positive for them, but Declan Rice's mindset, and I genuinely believe this will be the case, that he's looking at where can he go in and make the biggest difference. Can he go into Man City's team and make that much of a difference when they've got players like Rodri, De Bruyne, Haaland, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden? Can he go in there and make such a difference to them? I think he can make a difference, but not as much of a noticeable difference as I think he can at Arsenal. And I think Rice will look at that and think, I've got more of a chance of starting every single week for a team like Arsenal and improving them, taking them to that next level than I do at Man City. The other thing to consider as well is potential captain material. You know, as much as I like Odegaard as a player, not sure he's captain material. Arsenal fans can correct me if I'm wrong, if they think that actually he is great captain material. But I've seen a number of occasions last season where Zinchenko was actually organising on-field huddles to galvanise the team. I'm thinking, why isn't Odegaard doing that? He's the team captain. He should be leading that. So I think that Rice will eventually be England captain. It's just a matter of time. He was West Ham captain, of course, and I think he will be Arsenal captain at some point as well. And then you look at some of the other transfers they've been making. They brought Kai Havertz in. Now, jury's out as to whether the 65 million they've paid for that is a good move or not. I can only presume that Arsenal are hoping that they're going to get the Kai Havertz from his time in Germany rather than the time at Chelsea. Timber coming in from Ajax is another good move. So they are building the foundations of a really strong team. Now, none of this guarantees success. Of course it doesn't. Arsenal could have a season like Liverpool or like Chelsea or Spurs and fall away and maybe, creep into the top 4 as minimum. I mean, top 4 next season has to be their absolute target. They'll want to win trophies within the next couple of years for sure. But right now, there is absolutely no guarantee, and Arsenal fans can scream and shout all they like. There is no guarantee that they are back and therefore going to challenge for the title every single season. If you genuinely think that, you are deluded and brain dead. That is not the way the Premier League works. All right, we've seen it time and time again with other teams who have had just as strong. Look at Liverpool, the squad that they had the season before last. They played every single game available to them. They got to the final of every competition they went into, and then the following season, despite that strong squad, they fell away. Now, there are reasons for that. I'm sure they didn't probably invest. They had an aging midfield, etc., etc. I'm just saying it can happen. It's not a guarantee. You can be excited, and you should be excited because you've got the fundamentals and the foundations of a fantastic team, but it's not a guarantee. So do away with this whole, he's coming to us, he's guaranteed to win trophies, because he's not. He's not guaranteed to win trophies. He's guaranteed to be in the conversation, I think, with the direction of travel that Arsenal are going, but there's no guarantees of anything. So I think that trope needs to stop. That just needs to calm down, and we just need to sort of say it how it is. We're all adults here. Just say it how it is. Arsenal are in a really good spot. They've got the foundations of a brilliant team. I still think they need another striker, potentially, unless they're going to make more use of Nketiah and maybe Balogun, who's come back off from loan. But ultimately, I think they're in a really good spot. The key thing will be this season, which is probably some of these signings and what they're targeted to do, is how they can maintain challenges across multiple fronts now that they're back in Europe. That could be a decisive factor this season in how well Arsenal do. But overall, fantastic move for Arsenal. They are getting an unbelievable player who's going to make a huge difference to that midfield. I thought Xhaka had a great season, but it sounds like he may be moving on. Still not 100% sure on that. Thomas Partey went missing for the last couple of months of the season, which was one of the reasons I think Arsenal fell short. And Rice just goes in there, and he's such an unbelievable professional and just such a workhorse. He does so many good things, does all the basics just to such an amazing level. There's a reason that Arsenal paid 105 million for him at the end of the day, because they know what he can bring to that team. So Arsenal fans, you should be excited. You're getting an unbelievable player. It's going to kill me to see him in an Arsenal shirt. Don't get that wrong. But I think he's going to be fantastic for Arsenal. So on to point 3 then, the price. Is it a fair price? Now, if you talk about ability alone, 105 million for any football player is a lot of fucking money. That is a lot of money, right? I'm not sure Declan Rice as a footballer alone is worth 105 million. But here's the kicker, right? And this is something that I don't think a lot of football fans and pundits and everybody take into account, that the price that you pay for a footballer is not just for his ability as a footballer. You are buying his value to the club that is selling him. Now, in West Ham's case, you've got a footballer that is at the top of his game. He's come through our academy partly after we picked him up from Chelsea. He's worked his way through the ranks. He's a regular for England. He's West Ham captain. He's an unbelievable ambassador on and off the pitch. He's driven us forward. If he's probably had a big hand in keeping us up last season, because we had a shocking season, apart from the European adventure, which, by the way, he led us to our first European trophy in 60 years. Now, I'm not interested in hearing people who say, oh, it's only the Conference League. The Conference League is a European title. It's as simple as that. And I'm pretty sure there were days many moons ago that there used to be 3 European competitions. I think it was called the Intertoto Cup. Now, it's designed for smaller teams. There's a reason that only certain numbers of teams can get in the Champions League, because they're the guys with the best teams. They've got the most money, best managers, etc., etc. So the European competition for the next category down of football teams is still a massive thing. Don't be telling me that the scenes at the end of that game last season where Jose Mourinho, a serial winner for Roma, was going nuts when he won that Conference League. Go and tell him that it means nothing. All right? If Jose Mourinho, somebody who's practically won it all, is celebrating like he did at the Conference League, that tells you that European competitions, regardless of their merit and which order they're in and whether it's the best teams or the not so best teams, doesn't matter. It's a European trophy. And Declan Rice led us to our first competition win in God knows how long. That's literally, in my lifetime, that is the first trophy I've seen us win, if you discount the playoff final, which is depressing, but it's the reality that we're in. So Arsenal are buying all of that. They're buying everything that they can from West Ham, and I think that West Ham are well within their rights to ask for that sort of money. Arsenal are going to get anywhere from 5 to 10 years from him, injury depending. So I think that you've got good value for money. I really do. I think let's have this conversation again in 6 months. And if Declan Rice can continue playing for Arsenal like he's been playing for West Ham and England, I think that there'll be absolutely no debate whatsoever that Arsenal fans have got a good player for a decent price, because I think he can add that much to an Arsenal team. So what next for West Ham then? Tricky, isn't it? Because as I say earlier on, we've not been in this situation before. We've never had to fill a void quite like we are going to have to try and do with Declan Rice. Now, he was so important to the club, he was so important to the team, he was so important to the fans, but he's not the only good CDM in the entire world. Let's not forget that, okay? He's not the only amazing world-class player in the world. There are other players out there if we can go and find them. Now, if it were me, I'd be very tempted to take whatever money Arsenal are giving us up front. It's rumoured to be about 70-75 million up front. I would take that and I would go and look at players like Sofian Amrabat, Edson Alvarez from Ajax. Caicedo, highly unlikely, but could you tempt him with enough money if you threw the money at him? Probably not, but perhaps he should be in the conversation. So there are players out there that we can fill the void with, but we've got to be realistic in our expectations of what we can replace Rice with. Rice is a one-of-a-kind player for West Ham. We are not going to go out and find another Declan Rice. What might need to happen is that West Ham need to change their approach a little bit, which is risky because you've got David Moyes in charge, who's very stubborn. But it might be that we need to buy different players and actually put the onus on what Rice gave us onto somebody else. And I'm looking at Lucas Paquetá, because the last couple of months of last season he was outstanding, and I think actually maybe we should look to build the team around him a little bit, get one or two players in that can help cover that defensive midfield role. I'm not sure that Souček can do it. I'm not sure that Flynn Downs can do it, not to the same level anyway. So we are definitely going to need to bring in at least one, possibly two more players to fill into that void, especially as we are in the Europa League again this year as a result of our Conference League victory. So those are the sorts of players. I would love Amrabat. I think that he is probably the nearest like for like you're going to get to Declan Rice. His tenacity, his work rate, he's just fucking everywhere. I thought he was brilliant for Morocco in the World Cup. He was brilliant in the final for Fiorentina against us. And I suspect he will have other suitors, and if other teams like I think United have been credited with an interest as well, I think if they go in for him, chances are he's going to choose them over us, which is totally fair enough. But if he's available and he's willing to move to us, I think that he should be our number one pick, because I think that he is the closest you're going to get to Declan Rice in terms to a like-for-like replacement. Finally then, let's talk about, is Declan Rice leaving West Ham United as a legend? That is a question that's been thrown around a lot over the past couple of weeks, couple of months, since it became apparently obvious that he was going to move on. I think that it's an open-ended statement, right? Because everyone's got a different idea of what the word legend means to them. I don't necessarily think that my definition of legend would be the same as somebody else's. So I'll try and be as all-encompassing as I can and try and give it an overarching view on this. I think personally, it's a coin toss for me, because if you look at what he's achieved, 250 games for West Ham, to come through the youth ranks, started as a defender, went into midfield, and has grown and grown and grown. That alone doesn't make you a legend. You know, he's a great ambassador for the club. He's a fantastic human being by all accounts. So, you know, we all saw that video with that young West Ham fan who was, you know, just completely overcome with emotion at meeting him. And we've seen numerous other stories of Rice going back to his roots and going back to where he grew up and all that kind of stuff. So I think that those things alone don't necessarily make him a legend. I just think it just makes him a great player and a great human being. I think it boils down to, do you think that he has earned legendary status by being the captain that led us to European glory? I think that's where the decision for a lot of people can be won or lost. Personally, as I say, I don't feel like those previous things, the appearances, the games, etc., I don't think you can class him as a legend purely on that. He's been a brilliant player, one of the best players we are likely to see in our lifetimes playing for West Ham. Probably, that can change, but probably. But I think that what he did for us in the 2 European seasons we had, he really drove us forward, and he ended up winning a trophy. And I think I'm right in saying, I'm sure I read this, that he is the first West Ham captain to lift a European trophy since Bobby Moore. I mean, that's pretty esteemed company. And Bobby Moore comes from a time where playing for one club for a long period of time, and West Ham had a good period of success in and around that time. But he was with our club for an awful long time. Declan Rice has been with us for 6 years, I think, 6-7 years. So he's been with us a good chunk of time as well. I think if I had to give you an answer right now, I think he does leave as a legend. I don't think it's unfair to say or unreasonable to say that could be the last trophy that West Ham win for another 10, 20, 30 years. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? We've got some money coming into the club, but that doesn't guarantee success. Other clubs are always improving. Other clubs have bigger reputations than we do. We've got an awful long way to go to ever start being in the conversation regularly for trophies. So if I'm a West Ham fan, I'm turning around and saying, no, Rice has given us something that most fans are only going to get once in their lifetime. For me, that has to be legendary status. How can it not be? How can you not say that the success it did? I mean, the night I had down the pub with all my friends, all the other West Ham fans were there, that will live with me forever. Like, it was just such an amazing day. And I watched that game back, and I watched those moments back so many times. And for me, he's a huge part of why that. I mean, I'd almost go as far to say that there's multiple players that could be classed as legend. You know, Jarrod Bowen for scoring the winning goal for us, potentially legend. David Moyes as a manager, much critiqued, much hated in certain parts, and I've criticised him a ton last season. But he has to go down as a legend as well, surely. I mean, you can be a legend for the club, but still maybe a little bit of resentment for leaving. You can still be both of those things. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can be both. And it's a bit like the whole, people are saying, well, why has he gone to Arsenal? He's gone to a rival. It's like, well, he can still love a club, but want to further his own career. In my line of work, if I got picked up, or if I got touted by a bigger company in the same field, in the same industry, and they were market leaders, they were winning awards left, right, and centre, they were offering more money, they were offering a better team of people I could play with and learn from. Okay, I think I would probably accept that. Is there anybody here that wouldn't? I mean, there's loyalty, and then there's just blind loyalty. And I think that, again, going back to what I said earlier, I think West Ham fans are living in a dream world and a delusional if they think that Declan Rice wasn't going to choose to leave us to go and try and be all he can be. And I, for one, don't hold that against him. Why should we hold that against him? He's given us everything on and off the pitch, regardless of his apparently secret desire to leave the team for the last 2 years. I mean, if that noise, right, if those stories hadn't been presented in the media, and by the way, we can disregard an awful lot that the media say, because when Rice is going for the sort of money that he's going for, and it's such a big story, he is a journalist's wet dream, because they can just basically write whatever the fuck they want with absolutely no sources, no actual facts behind it. It doesn't matter. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that he wanted to go but didn't tell anyone. There was no stories about apparently his dad pushing for the move or meeting up with Arteta for dinner. Would you have ever known that he had a desire to leave based on his performances? No, you would not. There's absolutely nothing that I can say that would suggest to me that he had his mind elsewhere, that he had his head turned. He gave everything. He went through patches of bad form here and there, just like everybody did. But that is absolutely not down to the fact that he's down tools because he wants to go. If that was the case, he would never have recovered his form, and he absolutely did. he was probably one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that we didn't get relegated last season. You know, other players picked up form here and there as well. Bowen found a bit of form. Antonio started scoring. Paquetá started playing a lot better. But when all those players were playing shit, the one constant was that Declan Rice was still giving everything on that pitch and keeping us in games. And I won't accept any West Ham fan telling me different. So anyway, let's wrap this up then. So overall, I think it's a good move for all parties. It's the only move for all parties, really. I do hope that, you know, I mean, Twitter is such a toxic place, but I do wish that fans on both sides, I mean, Arsenal fans, you know, they do seem to be that extra little bit deluded, some of them on Twitter. Twitter's a toxic place anyway, but Arsenal fans are taking it to another level on there, sort of wishing us relegation and all this kind of stuff. Whatever, it's football banter, I get it, but I just hope that when the dust settles with this, and Declan Rice, we get used to seeing him in an Arsenal shirt, which might take a while for me. I just hope that both clubs can just kind of move on from this. Arsenal have got their man, they've got what they wanted. It's now down to West Ham to find a suitable replacement and really try and kick on. Because if we harbour any ambitions of in the future keeping players of similar quality, we've got to start producing and we've got to start being in that European conversation more often than not. So, yeah. That's my thoughts anyway. Hopefully I've been fairly rounded in my thoughts. Hopefully you can you can see that I'm trying to keep personal emotions out of this as much as I can, as much as I love Declan Rice and I really did not want him to go. It was going to happen. I think we just have to face up to the reality. I think we just got to be realistic about this. So anyway, please do let me know in the comments down below what you think. Keep it respectful. For the love of God, keep it respectful. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. It's absolutely fair and fine. But don't get abusive with it, because it's out of our hands, frankly. It's not something that we have any real say in. We can just voice our opinion, but that's it. So let me know in the comments what you think. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Sub for more if you're interested in the old retro LMA series. You'll find that me and Dan from the podcast have been doing a ton of LMA videos. It's been incredibly scuff and incredibly fun. Loads of great moments. And of course, our podcast itself will return in just a couple of weeks' time, which will be available on all platforms. So yeah, make sure you sub for all of that. Follow us on all of those podcast platforms, and we'll see you on the next one. Hope to see you soon. Cheers.